Thank you for coming to our presentation. My name is Abbe Muller, and I will introduce our pilot project and organization. But first, I would like to take a minute and read you our presentation. So I'd like you all to take a minute and imagine that you or a loved one goes into cardiac arrest. Call the ambulance takes you to the hospital. The doctor takes out a defibrillator, and it's broken. What does she do? She either gets a spare defibrillator, or in the absolute worst case scenario, they send you to a nearby hospital. In Zambia, that's not the case. There is no supply closet that has a spare defibrillator, and the nearest hospital is often over 100 kilometers away. I would like to introduce my team, or our team. This is Danny, Kathryna, Odette, and Meena. And we are the Tropical Health and Education Trust, or THET. We were founded 25 years ago to address the need for trained healthcare workers in developing countries. In 2009, THET established a close partnership with the Ministry of Health in Zambia through the Biomedical Engineering and Training Program, or BMET. In 2013, THET established the first diploma course for biomedical engineering in the entire sub-Saharan Africa. They established it in response to a call from the Zambian government, whom they partner closely with. Today, we provide training, advice, and grant support to healthcare workers, to healthcare worker education and training projects in over 200 hospitals worldwide. In 2013 alone, THET trained over 14,000 healthcare workers. We accomplish our mission through a few core principles: being strategic, effective, sustainable, harmonized, and aligned. We will use these principles to establish the framework for an effective program to address an identified need in Zambia.
Our proposed project will be taking place in Zambia. It is a landlocked country in sub-Saharan Africa with about a population of 14.5 million. It is relatively politically stable with high rates of poverty and high rates of unemployment. Our project will be taking place in the Ndola district of the Copperbelt province. 30, 40, 60. These are the statistics that plague the healthcare service industry in hospitals in Zambia. 30% of hospitals did not carry the medical equipment necessary for their level of care. 40% of the medical equipment was either out of service, broken down because of inadequate maintenance and unavailability of spare parts and consumables. 60% of the equipment was 10 years or older.
Medical equipment is essential to providing effective patient care and is used to diagnose and treat everything from tuberculosis to pregnancy. In Ndola Central Hospital, which is a tertiary hospital, we have 851 beds and 97 baby cots. It's the second largest health institution in Zambia, and it is the referral center for the northern part of the country. We serve a population of over 500,000 people and employ over 100,000 staff members, including 78 doctors and 334 nurses. These are examples of equipment that is commonly used in the Ndola Central Hospital. Not shown, but is X-ray, both fixed and mobile machines, the ultrasound machine, which is in the top left, vital sign monitors, top right, and anesthesia machines and vents, which is in the bottom, and also suction units. These are also examples of equipment that are often not functional, and it's due to improper preventative maintenance and improper use by medical staff. In Zambia and in Ndola Hospital specifically, when medical equipment is not functioning, you simply lose the ability to provide that service to patients, and this is a problem. So the goal of our project is to improve procurement, management, and maintenance of medical equipment through a pilot project that we would implement in Ndola Central Hospital.
In order to achieve that goal, we have developed the following objectives, which focus on these key areas: a needs assessment, inventory management, a procurement plan, hospital policies, and the staff at Andola Central Hospital. So first we'll talk about the needs assessment. The main purpose for this is to fully understand what challenges are at Andola Central Hospital regarding the maintenance and management of medical equipment. Our plan is to conduct this needs assessment within the first year of this pilot project. The information that we collect from the needs assessment will be used to make recommendations on these components. We want to obtain a baseline information about the health service facilities and the human resource qualifications and requirements. We also want to obtain baseline availability and status of the medical equipment at the hospital. In addition to that, we want to obtain a baseline status of the current electrical, water, and waste disposal for medical use. Lastly, we want to obtain financial provisions and capacity around procurement and management of medical equipment, specifically for spare parts and consumables. All of this information will help us to understand the health needs of this community in Andola. Upon receiving the recommendations from the needs assessment, we will focus on creating an enabling environment for the health staff at Andola Central Hospital. We will do this by equipping them with the skills that they need to practice maintenance and management of equipment by the pilot's second year of the program. So the corresponding activities that will address this objective include utilizing the biomedical engineering technician graduates from NORTAC to provide training to the current hospital staff. We would also prepare an online and offline training modules that would act as refresher trainings for the staff. In addition to that, we want to create flowcharts or some kind of algorithm that highlights maintenance troubleshooting information for the staff at the hospital. Lastly, we would revive the Medical Equipment Maintenance Committee to take ownership of this project at the hospital level. All of this will ensure compliance and quality assurance at Andola Central Hospital.
So as Kathryna has taken you through two of our objectives, I'll be taking you through the remaining three, of which the first is inventory management. It's creating an inventory database and using the database for creating a preventive maintenance management program. Now for those of you who do not know what preventive maintenance and management of medical equipment is, including me before this assignment, it's basically a program, a plan where you service equipment in a given schedule based on the equipment specifications. It's quite an invasive procedure where you remove the spare parts and kind of clean it up and assemble it again. Something similar like servicing a car. That's how I understood it. The activities that would go into this would be creating an inventory, first a list of equipments, identifying the equipments which are priority, which are critical, and which break down frequently. So these are the equipments exactly that would go into the preventive maintenance management schedule, and we want to ensure that the hospital staff use this database to have a regular schedule which is not just made but also used. Another benefit of having an inventory in place and having the details about the breakdown and the usage of the equipment would be the procurement plan would be informed by the inventory data. How? So when we know that the equipments are breaking down in a certain frequency, we exactly know when to service them, plus we also know when to procure the spare parts and consumables for that equipment. So that's how the procurement plan is going to be influenced by the inventory database, and also replacing the equipment, as we learn that most of the equipment are 10 years old, and if we have this database, we know exactly when and how many equipments we need to replace, and that will also inform your financial planning, which I'll talk about. Yeah. So speaking of financial planning, it's all about policy changes at the procurement level, at the financial level, and also the hospital functioning. So if we have this preventive maintenance management program to function well, we really need to make changes in the hospital which are not currently a plan of the government, not currently a practice of the government. So we want to identify these policies and seek the government buy-in to change these policies at Andola Hospital, which is our pilot site, and then scale it up. The changes would be making financial provisions for procurement of consumables, spare parts, and tools and devices required for the maintenance management, making budgetary provisions implemented in the government health planning. That's how when the district health action plans are being made and the government financial plans are being made, we want to ensure that it's included in that. And also changes in terms of procurement policies, because to give an example, presently Zambian health facilities are not allowed to procure spare parts from outside the country. That's like a government policy, and this makes it like difficult to have the equipments in functional conditions, especially, and also the Zambian resellers would sell it at 4 times higher the cost. So if we change this policy, it would be much easier for the hospitals to directly procure from outside manufacturers. Basically, these are like tentative what we plan to do, but the real plan of creating the systems would come from the needs assessment, would be informed by the needs assessment. These are our objectives and exactly how we do it. Danny will give it.
So Zambia is a very good place for this program to start. Excuse me. Zambia, as we mentioned, very politically stable. There have been many efforts to actually increase health awareness, as well as different medical devices. Even Boston University has tested medical devices and worked on them in Zambia. And for that reason, we are not just a training program. We are also much deeper than that, because we have long-term objectives that seek to change the actual underpinning culture and sensitivity towards maintenance and management of medical equipment. So yes, we will be providing high-quality workshops, and we will be increasing the volume of technically trained employees. But we would also like to promote co-training and more cross-training between upper-level and lower-level management through a leadership committee. We want a compliance culture to be enacted within this program, so that in the long run, we will have positive outcomes that will lead to policy change and government buy-in. And in doing so, we're going to split between Group 1 and Group 2. We have our administrators and our higher level managers, as well as our end users. And through this cross-training, in between our workshops, we will be able to actually integrate what they've learned into everyday practice, so that we can increase their level of awareness, as well as raising their own ownership of the quality of care that they give to all of their and patients and people throughout the country.
Here we have 2 examples of some of our trainings and workshops and what we plan on doing. So we're going to split up, as we had said previously, between administrators and the end users. Our Group 1 will specifically focus on overhead management and procurement policies. We'll include 10 workshops and will be conducted in 5 months, so we're thinking bi-monthly. Our Group 2 will be mainly end users like doctors, nurses, as we had previously mentioned, and that will specifically focus on daily management and maintenance, and will be more scheduled around trainings as opposed to workshops. We really want doctors, nurses, and end users to take ownership of this equipment and maintain it on a daily basis. And since they won't be technically provided the training through the BMET program, we will provide it through our trainings in 5 months. So our budget. This part's exciting. Our budget is $311,105, and I also converted it to Zambian currency for your convenience. Our budget consists of 4 main activities: our needs assessment, our ongoing monitoring and evaluation, our leadership committee, and our training and workshops. Within each of these components of the budget, what we will be including is wages and salaries for key personnel, as well as level of effort or any other expenses for personal. We will be providing food, consumables, and other materials to facilitate the workshops. We will also include, which is my favorite part, we will have operations assistants and project management assistants for the 2 main THET personnel, which would be Meg and Ed from the home office, the country post office. But this operation assistant and this project assistant will facilitate all of the data collection throughout the entire process, and will ensure that Meg and Ed and the rest of the THET community and organization has all the information necessary to scale up this project after the 3-year program. And just to emphasize, this budget is for 3 years for Ndola Central Hospital specifically.
So moving forward, what are we giving these end users and managers for the future cultural shift and infrastructural shift that we hope to see with our newly enacted and widespread policies? Well, the diagnostic capabilities and maintenance schedules will be there, but standard operating protocols will be open and active. They will be engaged upon regularly for updates and certain strategies to move the actual program forward. And this vertical integration will help everybody involved and all the partners actually see the progress as we move forward over a period of time. And the really nice thing about this is that no matter how the infrastructure of the medical infrastructure changes in Zambia, or how many aid organizations will help develop this infrastructure, or how the technology might change and become this scalable pipeline technology that we're all expecting to see in the future, this is going to establish the fundamental appreciation and sensitivity for training and medical equipment management for the future, so that moving forward, there's going to be that compliance culture we mentioned before.
Thank you very much for listening to our presentation. We hope you have a good day.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you for a great presentation. We'll turn questions over to the external review board.
Great. Do you want to start, or?
I've got a couple.
Yeah.
Sure.
I have more than a couple, but I'll just go with a couple. So first, have you thought about success metrics? How are you specifically going to determine whether or not this is successful?
So with our metrics, we actually want to be able to see that more functionality of equipment is a priority, but the actual updating and dialogue between upper and lower level management, so that there's actually education moving forward for all parties involved within the hospital and all the way to the Ministry of Health, because when they see these improvements, they will actually be buying in more and encouraging them. So we'll be able to actually monitor them as they move forward with our data systems and our record systems for inventory, budgeting, and we should be seeing more savings with an increased functionality of equipment.
I can also add on a little bit to that. We also plan on recording the patient wait times per machine before the pilot project is implemented and after, to see if there's a significant change in wait time per machine.
Have you thought about quantifying the number of machines that have been broken down in the past but are no longer broken down now?
Yes, we have like two indicators to measure our success. One in terms of cost effectiveness of the intervention. We could do it simply based on the capacity of the local people to either just track down the cost of maintenance and repair over a period and see how the trends are. We can also have a complex indicator where we see the cost of maintenance of running this program versus the cost of the equipment, like a ratio. The second metrics of evaluation, quantifiable evaluation, would be the percentage of equipment functional at a given point of time. That's the indicator that the government is also using, so it's good to measure that.
I'll ask one more and then I'll turn it over. How's that? By the way, I thought you did a great job. So I should start with that. How do you think the hospital administrators or government officials will actually respond to this intervention that you're very graciously bringing to them? But is this something that they've identified as a need, and are they seeking it or are you selling it?
So I can actually talk about this. In 2011, there was a similar sort of project that went on using JICA, which is the Japanese organization that came in to do the assessment. And essentially what they said is that where what they did failed was based on they provided guidelines, but it wasn't incorporated into hospital policy. And I think that the leadership committee, which we have a close connection with the Ministry of Health, which is overseeing Ndola Central Hospital. So the chief medical equipment officer in the Ministry of Health also works at Ndola Hospital. So he will, we'll have key personnel that are part of this meeting from the Ministry of Health, the chief medical equipment officer, from the other Ministry of Health, which is MCH.
Yes.
Don't remember what the acronym stands for. but having this meeting, convene, and review policy, and having to enact a policy, not just guidelines, but write it into the hospital's SOP, it'll ensure that this isn't something that we're implementing on them, it's something that they will be creating and implementing themselves.
They've identified the
Yes.
need, though, they've said, we have this problem, can you help us fix it? It's not,
So
you're
s-
walking in and
I can,
fixing.
yeah, I can
Okay.
answer that very quickly. So some of the statistics that I was presenting, the 30, 40, 60, was actually in a document created by the Ministry of Health itself. Like, this is a need, a dire need. The medical equipment is just not functional at the current moment. Hospitals are not functioning to their full capacity, and hundreds of patients are being left out in the cold because of this situation. So this is something that they've identified.
And to add to Abbe and what Odette said, the biomedical engineering technician program, the training program, was started as an ask by the government. So it was a government demand, and we responded to that call. And this project is nothing but an extension of that training program to take these trained technicians out to the hospitals and actually implement these mechanisms. So we are sure and confident about the government buying.
So I will second what you eventually said, which was did a great job. It was really a very, you divided up very nicely. The presentation was crisp. It was very good. And I'm just gonna run through a couple of the notes I made. I have to say this because I am a doctor. If somebody has a cardiac arrest, by the time they get to a hospital, it's too late for a defibrillator. So I just had to say that. You may want to tweak that analogy, but I loved using that analogy. And I like that you framed this within the SMART framework of your presentation, which was really good. You know, having worked in many, many hospitals in Africa, you know, the term that's used when you see piles of broken down equipment with, you know, dust on them and taking up rooms is often junk for Jesus. And it's the donations that come in that are broken, that they can't get spare parts on, they come in without any instructions for how to use the equipment, and it becomes just a burden to the country and the hospital that's received it. So this is an incredible need. I'm wondering, you know, you're saying you're gonna use the BMET people who have been trained. Are you doing a train the trainer program? Because I think that's really important for sustainability.
Absolutely.
So we actually incorporated that into our budget, and we should have probably put it in the presentation as well.
Yeah.
But we are gonna have a 2-day full session train the trainers using the BMET trainers, and it's graduates as opposed to students. The students will be facilitating in the M&E and the needs assessment.
And do you have people who are experts in educational approaches working with you to help design these programs?
That has, they have a network of consultants that are experts in those areas.
Okay. And I'm just curious about how you, and if you're aware of this, there are some other programs going on in Africa, in Rwanda, in Nigeria, Ghana, Ethiopia have some programs that are training engineers. And are you aware of those programs, or can you
Yes.
comment on how you differ from those programs?
Well, yes, we're aware of programs that have been in Tanzania, Uganda, and also India. And there is anecdotal evidence that the programs have been overwhelmingly successful, but there has not been any quantifiable success indicators given as such. And our pilot project exactly seeks that. So our main aim is to show that this intervention is cost effective, and this is how we are different from others.
And I really did also want to second what Jonathan said, which is that the metrics metrics of success are really important to any donors, and so that's something that I just want to emphasize again. And we could keep chatting, but I know this man has some really good comments to make, so nice job.
Yeah, and with that set up, there are clearly nothing very worthwhile is going to be forthcoming.
A few things that I really liked about the presentation. First, a simple point, Abbe, starting with your introduction by personalizing it. I mean, it's sort of basic 101. Probably we all know what you're doing, but it's still important to do. It was a great way to start. Generally, as a potential funder, I would be interested in and look favorably upon the idea that you're leveraging really an existing tech training program, and you're feeding that into, you're connecting it with the hospital needs. So I think that's a great positive that you're working with, and to the extent it's accurate and you can emphasize that, it would be attractive to people, I think. One question I did have about these diploma graduates, though, you're giving them a very marketable, and you may well not have looked into this, but, okay, you're giving them a very marketable skill, which could either be of use in the private sector in South Africa, where wages are higher. What do you do, if anything, to tie the diploma graduates to the hospitals in the country?
I can talk about that just a
Sure,
little
yeah.
bit.
Yeah, you're
So we are in the process of, and we created the first position at the Ministry of Health, which is the CMEO, or the Chief Medical Equipment Officer. So we provide, elevated titles. We provide room for them to, go up the ladder as they kind of get more technical experience. And I think that this project is also designed to create an environment that they're able to work effectively in. And it's not going to be an environment where they get frustrated because, they have no preventative maintenance and they're just kind of running around throwing Band-Aids on things, which I think in the past has caused the more qualified biomedical engineers to leave the country and seek employment elsewhere. But this is really trying to create an environment where they will work effectively in and they have room to move up.
Yeah, one of the things you can't do anything about is, if I remember the summary, it's a 3-year program that started in 2013, so you can't say, and I can demonstrate to you that there's an evidence base that we can retain these people. So that's just a fact. You can't fix it. It's out there. Anyway, another, sorry.
Well, actually, the placement is like in the form of a hospital attachment, which is like an internship, a practical experience towards the end after the 3 years. And once a batch has been out, we're sure the next batch is there to take their positions, rolled over.
Okay.
And the 3 years is a diploma program, but we've had the BMET Institute we've had trainings before that. So we've had people pass through, but it wasn't a 3-year diploma program.
Okay. Another point I really liked, and I thought you did it very well in the presentation and then in answering questions Jonathan and Lynn had. As a general matter, culture eats plans for lunch. I mean, you have to get at the culture, and I think you recognize that well, that this is really all about, and in fact, to some extent, you're being asked for the program, which suggests that the culture elements are there. So I thought you hit the points nicely, and then had even more information in the Q&A responses. But that's really key to this, because you can have a great plan, and if the culture at both the hospitals and also the MCD, MCH is a brand new ministry, as I understand it. So whether or not, or relatively new ministry, so whether or not they're going to have the culture and the belief in the importance of maintenance and the deferred maintenance problem is key here. In that regard, is there anything, and again, you may not have been able to address this with the whole 9 days that you've had, but a major element here, and this, I don't know if it's part of your training program, but budgeting for capital maintenance, you get deferred maintenance, generally speaking, and things break, because the easiest budgeting thing in the world is to paint the machine and buy something else. And as somebody mentioned, and it's a very important point in capital budgeting, complex systems tend to break in cycles for various reasons, and I don't know about hospitals of this scale, but generally speaking, you have these long cycles where suddenly, over a 1-2 year period, all your machines break because they were all purchased at the same time, or the building starts to go down because it was built whatever number of years ago. It's very hard to budget for that. It takes a fair degree of sophistication. Very sophisticated organizations, including many universities, do terrible jobs of it. Is part of the training, you have to teach them how to budget for this type of capital cycle. Is that part of what you're teaching the hospitals? Because just understanding the technical side of, and or the importance of the maintenance is only two of the components. If they can't actually budget and come up with some depreciation mechanic that allows them to deal with this problem, you're not gonna get anywhere. So is that part of what you're teaching?
Absolutely, yeah. More financial responsibility and actual accountability when it comes to the cycles you speak of. And the interesting thing is it's even more complex with these hospitals because a lot of their equipment is actually donated or secondhand. So actually you're going to have very random and sporadic maintenance cycles. So we try to keep up with that as much as we can by at least knowing the basics, contacting manufacturers and seeing when we can expect to see repairs and general maintenance done, and we can put it right into that easy-to-use database for everybody to learn, and we can at least promote prevention rather than reaction, as you said.
All right, two other very quick observations because I'm taking up too much time. One is just to second or third the critical importance, I would think, of the monitoring and evaluation function here. If you're going to convince, particularly if you're looking for funders and going to convince them that this can scale and can be happily adopted on a national basis, the evaluation is going to be key. I would also, the metrics you were citing make perfect sense, and given the government's focus on certain metrics, it's important. I wouldn't forget to measure doctors' reactions to it, and ultimately, you're gonna have to, I would think, try and tie this to health outcomes. So the hospital systems functions are important, as are the patient care, you use the machine more often, but ultimately, what do the doctors think, and are the patients getting healthier? One other very quick point. Depending on which types of machines are used and are breaking, and it was good that you gave us some information on that, this could be a good opportunity for corporate philanthropy.
So if I could jump back in, I've got a lot of observations. I thought we were in the Q&A section. I do have one more question before I give you my observations, if you don't mind. Have you given thought to breaking up the budget? You put a very specific $311,105. So, one observation might be you could do 300,000 or 325,000 or something a little around. But I didn't see a breakdown of how that money would be spent. Have you given thought to that?
That is included in the budget, and we can provide you with more information on that.
We have full copies of our proposal, which we can give you.
So I think an observation is if you're making a presentation, it would be helpful not just to top line the budget, but to say this is going toward this and this would go toward that. And then a point that John made that I'd like to just reiterate, if this is going to be nationally scalable, which is your hope, I think a little more discussion around how. It seems like this is a 3-year program. How would you actually scale it nationally beyond this particular hospital? What is the plan for that?
Yeah, I'll speak on it. So the program is actually a 3-phase program where you have the needs assessment as the first phase, and the implementation phase is the second, and third the evaluation. So during the implementation phase, we are actually going to make these changes that are required at the national level in one hospital, that's the pilot hospital in Mendola, and the exact same policy changes would be approved by the government for Mendola. In the process, when we prove that the policy changes are effective and saving the government money, they would make the same changes across other hospitals. So it's just replicating a micro model into the same micro model in other hospitals to scale up.
And a lot of the deliverables that we'll end up doing and kind of providing, which is like an implementation manual after this project is done, and some of the training manuals that will be developed throughout this project, those will be used during the scale-up phase. So in sustainability as well, the scaling up won't have the added costs that were already taken care of during the pilot project.
Yeah.
So just a couple of quick observations. First, I thought you did a remarkable job after only 9 days of being together. This was pretty compelling. I love the storytelling that you did at the beginning, and I think whenever you can start with a story, you'll grab the attention of the people you're presenting to much more so than just providing facts. You may have been able to do an even more storytelling around I said a real life situation, and this was a real life situation of an individual who perhaps went to the hospital and lost lost his or her life as a result of faulty equipment. But I thought and I didn't know what Lynn knew. I sell tacos for a living, so I'm not bright enough to know what she knows about defibrillators. I can't even pronounce it, never mind. But nonetheless, I thought that it was well done. Eye contact is really important, and so I would encourage you to continue to have eye contact with the people you're presenting to. Notes are great. I use them all the time. However, try not to rely on them as a crutch. And some of you had them, some of you didn't have them. If you really, and I know 9 days is not an awful long time, but if you, as you get to know this material, the passion will come out more if you rely less on notes. And I think we talked about the budget, we talked about the success criteria. I think I'll end it there, but really well done.
I'll take questions from the audience actually, if in case.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Why don't we take one or two and then we'll move on. Anybody want to? Yeah.
Thanks for your presentation. I was hoping you could tell me a little bit more about the trainings that you were going to do with end users. What additional responsibilities are you expecting clinicians to take on as a result of these trainings? And
Yes.
how are you going to convince them that those responsibilities are of equal importance to their clinical responsibilities?
Right. So the responsibilities would be very user specific. Like the end users would be having different cadres, like from the administration cadre, the hospital administrators, the nurses, the doctors, the clinicians. So we imagine to have all the health cadres trained in maintenance and management, just the level would be different. So the very basic end users would be trained on how to keep the equipment properly, how to operate it, how to open it, how to shut it down, and in case there is a problem, how to do troubleshooting, and if the basic troubleshooting does not work, how to report it. And reporting is very important. Yeah. The doctors would be trained a little more in detail, and it's mainly the technicians in the hospital that would be really focused on for training for preventive maintenance and management, to have this periodic schedules in place and how the data capture system should feed into this schedule. So it's like user specific actually. Thank you.
And an incentive for the doctors would really be just to be able to facilitate their work a little bit, make their work a little bit easier. If they're able to quickly troubleshoot and quickly fix whatever is wrong with the equipment at that moment, they can continue on with whatever they were doing as soon as it happens. And you don't have to wait for a technician to come in and spend a whole nother 5, 10, 15 minutes waiting to fix the machine.
I just had a quick question about redundancy. Did you put anything in the budget? Because sometimes with the preventive maintenance, the issue is you're bringing a piece of equipment out of service to do the preventive maintenance, and people don't want to do that. So have you budgeted for redundancy in equipment?
As far as labeling and up to date, like maintenance schedules, and just making sure that the right equipment is functional at the right time, just so we can adequately replace them and make sure we have enough to meet patient capacity. We've definitely considered that in our budget. Absolutely.
Great. Thank you. We'll stretch